Hello, fellas and ladies. So, this one's going to be a little bit of a weird one today, but it's also something that I felt really compelled to talk about with the way that things are going right now. So, as you know, if you've been here before, I generally try to stay away from talking about politics in any major or overbearing way. And the reason for that is one, political content doesn't do very well on commentary channels like mine. And two, I really try not to be the guy who lectures and preaches any gospel of ideology, regardless of your affiliation. As many of you already know or have probably guessed, I consider myself to be far left economically and far left socially, or I would just generally call myself a socialist. I believe that money, and especially wealth, has no societal purpose if it's not to help all people, and I believe in social programs like universal health care, welfare, unemployment, things of that nature. I also believe that there is no purpose to society without the principle of progressive advancement, and I believe that the world isn't a caring place, but that it absolutely should be and can be. I run my channel specifically in mind with the idea that it is a safe place for anybody, regardless of orientation, gender identity, race, socioeconomic status, immigration status, whatever. Anyone who is a part of a marginalized group absolutely has a home here, and if you disagree with that in any way, then I don't want you here. That has always been the energy that I've wanted to bring here, and I hope anyone who has watched me has always felt that energy. But there's also unfortunately a fine line between keeping all of that in mind and keeping the soul of what I want this channel to be, which is just a place that anyone can come to get a few giggles. What I'm mostly trying to convey is that I am a creator who is leftist, but I try not to be considered a leftist creator, and I feel like it's a very important but kind of difficult distinction. Think of someone like Drew Gooden, for example. Drew is a huge inspiration behind what I do here, and I'm sure you have noticed that before. And he is someone who is very much aligned with leftist politics without being inherently political. His video from a few months ago where he talks about how we actually got to where we are economically, which is an amazing video, by the way, I cannot recommend it enough.
The economy sucks ass for most people right now. The only reason we're not technically in a recession is because the GDP is still going up. But the only reason the GDP is still going up is because of the AI industry. But the only reason that even looks as good as it does is because a handful of companies are just like passing money back and forth. But there's no recession. You're hallucinating that.
Leans very heavily in that direction and specifically shows an alignment to socialism. But that is also the only video he's ever made that is in the vein of that type of topic, and people have overwhelmingly commented how incredible it is that he can go from a video about cat toys to a video about the socioeconomic state of the country, because he is a creator who is leftist, but he is not a leftist creator, which an example of that I would give is Hassan Piker. Hassan is very specifically a political commentator who makes content only specifically about leftist politics. That is the difference between a creator who is leftist, like Drew Gooden, like Eddie Burback, or like me, and a leftist creator like Hassan or Philosophy Tube. Now, I give you this long caveat to say that while I try to be distinct in this approach for the sake of inclusivity and to not be a preachy, smug, self-righteous asshole, today's video is, fuck all of that, because I've got some shit to say and I want to say it with zero constraints. On January 7th of this year, a day after the 5-year anniversary of when a large group of conservative rioters attempted to overthrow the government, Immigration and Customs Enforcement murdered a woman in broad daylight on camera by the name of Renee Good. Less than 20 days later, an ICU nurse by the name of Alex Peretti was again murdered by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in broad daylight and on camera. Renee Good was attempting to flee after having guns pointed at her by angry federal agents. Alex Peretti was attempting to help a woman who was shoved to the ground and assaulted by federal agents. On the same day that these state-sponsored executions were carried out, top government officials, including the vice president, called these people assassins and terrorists.
This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
Not only was it a completely idiotic thing to say when we have video proof of the incidents at hand, and the government's official stories of these events have been repeatedly debunked, but it was far too soon after these events to give any kind of possible detailed account of these events, and especially the motivations of the victims. Everyone who has the capacity for complex thought immediately saw through the deception and lies of this ruling administration. Anyone who has the ability to rub two neurons together saw this for exactly what it was, which is a government-sanctioned execution carried out by inept dipshits with too much power that they do not deserve. Now, many people, including myself, have drawn parallels between what is happening with the current administration and the events that led to the rise of the Third Reich. Many people have compared compared ICE to the secret police of Nazi Germany, also known as the Gestapo. However, I believe that there is a discussion that has gone largely neglected that draws a comparison between a different organization in Nazi Germany that I feel is a much more apt comparison and is significantly worse and much more terrifying. Before Hitler came into total power in 1934 with the death of von Hindenburg, he was appointed chancellor for many different reasons. One of the reasons was due to his ability to control the Sturmabteilung, or the SA, also known as the Brownshirts, which was the paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party before it came into full power. Up until this point, the SA was widely known for its tactics of intimidation of political opponents, and their tendency to start street brawls at random and just blatantly attack civilians. Because this was obviously bad for business in the political world, and Hitler had complete control over them and their chief, Ernst Röhm, the thought behind this condition of his appointment was that he could or would prevent them from committing these acts. Obviously, this was an underestimation from the people who sought Hitler's appointment, and they were eventually replaced by an even more brutal force, the Schutzstaffel, or the SS. But before Hitler's dictatorship was officially established, the SA was essentially the only militant group that the Nazi Party completely controlled. One of the conditions for the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I was that Germany's military was to be crippled to an extreme degree. They were not allowed more than 100,000 soldiers across the entire German army. They weren't allowed to have an air force, tanks, or submarines. They were extremely limited on artillery. They had so little of a military force that many believed that a takeover from a foreign power was pretty much inevitable. So add on the limitations of the official military and the fact that control over the official military was in hands of government officials other than Hitler, plus the fact that they were not specifically loyal to the Nazi Party itself, it came to be that the SA was who the party relied on for their offensives. In a similar vein to this, Trump and the Republican Party do not have complete control over any one branch of the military due to the way that it's set up. There are generals and officers and individual soldiers who are not fiercely loyal to him or their party ideology. However, ICE is a different story. ICE is based off of the idea of repelling foreign invaders that we share the continent with. This is a pretty much uniquely right-wing conservative idea. The way that fascism and authoritarianism thrives is through selling the idea of fear and hatred of a specific group of people. That group of people within this administration is immigrants, and to a rising degree, the almost mythical description of the sneaky, scary, violent leftists. This is evidenced by not only their physical and operational attacks against immigrants, but by their vilification of them and calling them rapists and murderers and human and drug traffickers.
The Democrats say, please don't call them animals, they're humans. I said, no, they're not humans, they're not humans, they're animals. We have people coming into the country, or trying to come in, we're stopping a lot of them. We're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these these aren't people. These are animals. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. Give you nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you. I don't want them in our country. Their country's no good for a reason. We're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, they're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be...
Despite the fact that an overwhelming majority of the people who are being deported have no convictions or criminal history at all. This is the same way that the Nazis sold the fear of Jews and communists and socialists and Romani people to the German people. They sold this idea that there was a secret other that was hiding amongst you in society, blending in while simultaneously plotting against you. They sold this idea that they were devious and deceptive and scary and sneaky, while also at the same time selling the idea that they were weaker and lesser and that the German people could rise up against them. It is a hypocritical ideology that creates this feeling of immediate danger and creates a paradoxical feeling of complete superiority. This is the same idea that Trump and his regime is selling you. The idea that immigrants are secretly hiding amongst you to rape you and kill you, while also being inferior and weaker, and that you can rise up and defeat them and expunge them from your society because you were superior. Wait, hold up, don't. Out of context, that sounds so fucked up. Please, nobody clip that. But it is meant to feed you this feeling of hatred but superiority while distracting you while these people consolidate ultimate power. There was a tweet that I read a few years ago that I wish I had saved because I think about it like every day. It was something along the lines of, kids throughout history history have always had an edgy phase, but what has changed in my lifetime is that there are large groups of people, including an entire political party, telling them that it is their God-given right to never grow out of it. This change is exactly how modern fascism thrives. It keeps you angry and ignorant and hateful and encourages you to never grow up even as you age. And those people getting older is exactly why we are seeing what we are seeing. People who follow this line of thought become soulless and rageful and vengeful and narrow-minded with a refusal to take any kind of criticism or information. These are the kind of people that Trump not only attracts but actively encourages and creates. People only with a desire to destroy and harm, and that's the kind of people that he is sending out into the streets to brutalize and murder. Wrathful people incapable of rationality is how we get American brown shirts.